My name is Kate Andrews, and my life has been shaped by resilience and warmth. But for years, I poured my heart into my family hosting dinners, sharing recipes, and creating meals that turned simple gatherings into cherished memories. It wasn't for recognition, just love. But the love I gave wasn't enough. One day, my daughter-in-law, Kendra, looked me straight in the eyes and said, "I don't eat food made by someone who cleans houses for a living." And just like that, everything I had done for them was tossed aside. There was no apology, no acknowledgement of the effort I had made, just cold entitlement, leaving my pride shattered and my heart aching. I took off my apron, packed what little dignity I had left, and walked away. A fresh start, I thought. Distance, I hoped, would bring peace. But it didn't. The call came one evening, interrupting the quiet of my new routine. My son Michael's voice poured through the line, hesitant, layered with expectation. "Mom, Kendra wants to talk to you. She's upset." Upset? After everything she said? My anger bubbled deep within, stewing with the bitterness of her audacity. But something had shifted in me, no more blind acceptance, no more unspoken hurt. This time, the story would end on my terms. That call would be just the beginning. Drop your city below. We want to see how far this story has reached. I've always believed in the power of family, food, and shared moments to create bonds that last a lifetime. For years, I poured myself into creating a life that my loved ones could be proud of, managing my household with care, hosting dinners that brought everyone together, and supporting my family in every way I could. I'm the kind of woman who values simplicity and sincerity, and my joy comes from the small but significant moments. Planting flowers in my garden, perfecting the flavors of a recipe, or seeing my son smile across the dinner table. But behind my warmth lies a quiet strength. I've learned that life doesn't always reward kindness immediately, and that standing up for myself is just as important as supporting others. My journey hasn't been without its challenges, but I face every obstacle with grace and determination. I've built a life that reflects who I am: steady, thoughtful, and fiercely protective of my values. No matter what life throws my way, I know who I am, and I won't let anyone take that away. The day Amber poured the soup I made into the trash, I stood frozen in the kitchen, trying to convince myself it hadn't happened. But there it was, the pot I had stayed up late, simmering, the smell of herbs still lingering in the air, and her dismissive sneer as she dumped it out. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I didn't even ask why. Instead, I quietly cleaned the counters, as though that would somehow erase the humiliation etched into my soul. But the weight of her contempt and the silence from both Frank and Jason was crushing. The next morning, I made my decision. I packed my bags, booked a ticket, and left the house without a backward glance. It didn't take long for them to notice. By the time I stepped onto the train, Jason was calling me frantically. His voice was tight, accusing, like a child who couldn't understand why he wasn't getting his way. "Mom, you're going on a trip? Right after Amber gave birth? Have you completely lost your mind?" I didn't respond, letting his words hang in the air. Later that evening, Frank called. His tone was heavier, darker, a voice that had spent years perfecting the art of guilt. "Kate, what are you doing? Amber just had a baby and you're leaving? This is when she needs you most." I couldn't help but laugh bitterly, the sound sharp and cold. "Really, Frank? She needs me? That's funny, because last I checked, all she wanted was for me to disappear. So that's exactly what I'm doing." He didn't respond, but I could hear the frustration in his breathing. It didn't matter. For once, I wasn't going to back down. 2 days later, I was sitting on a quiet beach, the sand warm beneath my feet and the waves gently lapping at the shore. It wasn't peace, not yet, but it was better than the suffocating resentment I had left behind. My phone buzzed incessantly, but I ignored it. Calls from Jason, texts from Amber, even an email from Frank. It was like they had realized the gravity of my absence and were scrambling to pull me back into their chaos. But I stayed silent, refusing to answer. For the first time in years, I was putting myself first. The breaking point came a week later. During a call, I reluctantly answered. Jason's voice was frantic, panicked, as though the world was falling apart without me there to hold it together. "Mom, Amber's upset, really upset. She thinks you hate her, and now the baby won't sleep, and the house is falling apart. Can't you just come back? We need you." I exhaled slowly, gripping the phone tightly. "Jason," I said, my voice calm but firm, "you've managed just fine without me. You hired 2 full-time nannies, didn't you? Amber has all the help she needs. I'm not coming back to be treated like a servant." His response was weak, pleading. "Mom, Don't be so sensitive. You know Amber's emotions are unstable right now. Just let it go. That was the moment something inside me snapped. Let it go? I repeated, my tone icy. Jason, do you have any idea what I've given up for you? For this family? I married your father when I was 20, had you at 21, and spent the last 30 years running this household like a tireless machine. I cooked every meal, cleaned every corner, sacrificed every ounce of my energy, and what did I get in return? Amber treating me like I'm filthy, your father ignoring me, and you telling me to let it go. He hesitated, his voice weak. Mom, you're my only mother. Don't you care about our future together? I let out a bitter laugh. You're right, Jason. I am your only mother. But that doesn't mean I have to tolerate being disrespected and discarded like I don't matter. The conversation ended with tension thick enough to choke on. Jason didn't have the courage to argue further, and Frank didn't bother calling again. For the first time, the silence wasn't oppressive, it was liberating. I spent the following weeks rediscovering myself, piecing together the fragments of the woman I had lost to years of sacrifice. But even then, the phone calls didn't stop. The texts grew more desperate, Amber's apologies more frantic. Finally, a month later, my phone rang, and I saw Amber's name on the screen. I answered, her voice immediately breaking into sobs. Kate, she said, her tone raw and pleading. I'm sorry. I was horrible to you. I didn't mean it. I was just stressed. Please, please forgive me. I didn't respond right away, letting the weight of her words settle. Amber, I said finally, my voice steady, do you understand how much you hurt me? How much you've taken me for granted? How much you've belittled everything I've done for this family? She was silent, her sobs the only sound on the line. I do, she whispered. I didn't see it before, but I see it now. Please, let me make it right. I promise I'll do better. Just come back. We need you. I exhaled slowly, feeling the anger in my chest begin to soften. Amber, I'll consider forgiving you, but only if you truly mean it, and only if you show me, not just tell me. The line went quiet for a moment. Then she whispered, Thank you. As I hung up the phone, I realized the power had shifted not to Amber, not to Jason, but back to me. For once, I wasn't bending, sacrificing, or apologizing. This time, they would have to earn my forgiveness. And for the first time in my life, I felt free. The silence after Frank flipped the table was deafening. Pieces of my breakfast lay on the floor discarded, scattered, and ruined, just like the years of sacrifice and loyalty I had given him. I stared at the mess, not with anger, but with a deep, bone-shaking clarity. In that moment, it was all laid bare. Frank didn't see me as his partner, his equal, or even as a person. To him, I was disposable like those eggs, that toast, that coffee. Frank stood there, his face flushed, his chest heaving as he tried to gather his composure. But it was too late. I was done. What do you want from me, Kate? He asked sharply, breaking the silence. You've been acting crazy all week, and now you're leaving comments online to humiliate me? Do you really think this is how a wife behaves? I looked up at him, calm and unyielding. A wife? I repeated slowly. That's a funny word for what I've been to you, Frank. I've been your cook, your maid, your unpaid employee, your emotional punching bag, but a wife? No, I don't think I've been that in a long time. His jaw tightened, his hands curling into fists at his sides. You're being dramatic, Kate. Look at everything I've done for you. I gave you a home, security, a family. What more do you want? I let out a bitter laugh, shaking my head. You gave me nothing, Frank. I gave up everything for Yumi career, my independence, my identity because I believed in you. I stayed through every struggle, helped build your company from nothing, raised our son, and ran this household without ever asking for a thank you. And what did I get in return? A husband who treats me like I'm worthless. Frank's face darkened, his voice growing colder. You knew what you were signing up for when you married me. I wanted a traditional wife, a homemaker. That was your choice, Kate. Don't act like I forced you into it. I stood, my hands trembling, but my voice steady. No, Frank, you didn't force me. You promised me love, partnership, and respect. You told me we were building something together. But all you really wanted was someone to serve you without question, someone you could blame when things went wrong, someone you could throw away when you were done. Frank opened his mouth to respond, but no words came. For once, he didn't have an argument, no excuses, no justifications, nothing. He was cornered, and he knew it. I stepped forward, meeting his gaze directly. Tell me, Frank, when was the last time you asked me how I was doing? When was the last time you thanked me for anything I've done for this family? When was the last time you treated me like your equal, your partner, your wife? His silence was answer enough. Kate, he started weakly, his voice faltering. You're blowing this out of proportion. Cynthia needed help, and I stepped in. You didn't want to cook, so I did. Why are you taking this so personally? I shook my head, my laugh cold and humorless. I'm not angry because you cooked for Cynthia, Frank. I'm angry because you've never lifted a finger for me in 30 years. I'm angry because you've spent decades taking me for granted, and now you're furious that I won't let you do it anymore. He took a step back, his hands raised as if to defend himself. I didn't mean to. You didn't mean to what? I cut him off, my voice rising. You didn't mean to treat me like a servant? You didn't mean to belittle everything I've done for you? You didn't mean to flip that table and show me exactly what you think of me? Save it, Frank. I've heard enough. For a moment, the room was still, the air heavy with tension. Frank stared at me, his expression a mix of anger and disbelief, but I didn't flinch. I had spent decades bending to his will, sacrificing pieces of myself for the sake of peace. But today, stars began to peek through the sky, and for the first time in years, I felt calm. This wasn't just a fight, it was a turning point. I wasn't going to spend another minute as the woman who cooked, cleaned, and sacrificed everything for a man who saw her as nothing more than a convenience. Tomorrow, I would book my ticket. Tomorrow, I would leave this house behind. And tomorrow, I would start over not as Frank's wife, not as Jason's mother, but as Kate, a woman who finally remembered her worth. When Frank's name flashed across my screen, I stared at it for a moment, letting the phone vibrate in my hand. I could already imagine the tone on the other irritated, condescending, laced with that same entitled audacity he and Jason shared. But this time, I wasn't answering as the Kate they knew. I slid my finger across the screen, my voice calm as I greeted him. Frank. His response was sharp, accusatory. What is wrong with you, Kate? You've embarrassed Menno, all of us publicly. First your little vacation stunt, and now this snide comment to Cynthia? Are you trying to ruin this family? I let out a quiet laugh, a sound that cut through his rant like a blade. Ruin this family? I repeated, my tone dripping with disbelief. Frank, do you even hear yourself? This family has been walking all over me for years, and now that I've finally stood up for myself, you think I'm ruining it? There was a pause, a hesitation so brief that most people might have missed it, but I knew Frank too well. His fury wasn't fueled by my words. It was fueled by the fact that, for the first time, he couldn't control me. You've become unreasonable, Kate, he spat. Cynthia hasn't done anything to you. Amber's recovering, Jason's working hard, and I've been doing my best to keep this family together. Why are you making everything about you all of a sudden? My patience snapped. Because, Frank, it is about me. I gave this family 30 years of my life. 30 years of cooking, cleaning, sacrificing, and bending over backward to make sure you, Jason, and everyone else were comfortable. And how was I repaid? By being treated like an invisible servant, by being discarded the moment I dared to ask for basic respect. I could hear his breath quicken, his composure cracking under the weight of my words. Kate, he started, but I didn't let him finish. No, Frank, you don't get to interrupt me this time. Do you know what hurts the most? It's not Amber's insults or Jason's entitlement. It's the fact that my own husband, the man I gave up everything for, never once stood up for me. You watched them belittle me, humiliate me, and you said nothing. You did nothing. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. For a moment, I thought he might finally apologize, but then his voice returned, low and bitter. I've worked hard to provide for this family. Maybe if you'd appreciated that, things wouldn't have gotten this far. I exhaled slowly, shaking my head even though he couldn't see it. You think money excuses everything, don't you? You think because you paid the bills, I should have been happy to let you and everyone else treat me like I didn't matter. But let me make one thing clear. Frank, I'm done. I'm done sacrificing my happiness for a family that doesn't value me. Before he could respond, I hung up the phone and set it down on the table, my hands trembling. But it wasn't fear or regret that caused them to shake, it was the adrenaline of finally speaking my truth. That night, I sat outside on the ranch, the stars scattered across the sky like diamonds. The air was crisp, the kind of clean that makes you feel like you're breathing for the first time. And as I stared up at the vast, infinite darkness, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, peace. The next morning, Cynthia's social media post had vanished, as if erasing it could undo the comments that had unraveled their carefully curated facade. but the silence from Frank and Jason was louder than any response they could have given. They weren't used to a Kate who didn't comply, who didn't apologize, who didn't fold under pressure. I spent the rest of my time in Montana, immersed in the simple joys I'd forgotten. Horseback riding across the plains, savoring home-cooked meals made by someone other than me, and sleeping so deeply that my dreams felt like whispers of a life I could still build. One afternoon, while walking through a quiet stretch of the ranch, my phone buzzed with a text. It was from Jason. "Mom, can we talk? I know I've been wrong, and I want to apologize. Please call me." I stared at the message, my heart torn between relief and skepticism. Could Jason really change? Could he truly understand the depth of the pain he and his wife had caused? Or was this just another ploy to pull me back into their orbit of entitlement? I didn't reply right away. Instead, I let the message sit there, unanswered, as I continued my walk. For the first time, I wasn't rushing to fix everything, to put everyone else's needs above my own. I had spent 30 years giving and giving, and now it was my turn to take care of myself. When I finally returned to the guest house that evening, I looked at Jason's text one last time before setting my phone aside. Maybe I'd call him tomorrow, or maybe I wouldn't. Either way, I wasn't going to let anyone disrupt the peace I had worked so hard to find. Frank's smug voice echoed in my ears long after I hung up the phone. "Let me show you what life after divorce really feels like." His audacity was nauseating, the entitlement woven into his every word like a toxin. But this time, his threats didn't break me. This time, I saw him for who he truly was, and I was ready to fight back. The realization hit me harder than expected. For 2 decades, I had softened my edges to accommodate his arrogance. I had silenced my instincts, ignored the whispers, and told myself the rumors weren't true. But now, the truth was undeniable, and I felt a strange clarity wash over me. I called Susan back. "I'll meet with the lawyer," I said firmly. "It's time to end this." Susan's voice was warm, reassuring. "Honey, you're stronger than you think. Just focus on yourself. You deserve better than this." 2 days later, I arrived at the law office, clutching a folder stuffed with every piece of evidence I could find. My hands shook as I handed it over to the attorney, but not from fear. This was adrenaline, the rush of finally taking control. The attorney flipped through the documents, nodding occasionally. "You've got a strong case," he said, his tone professional but encouraging. "With this evidence and your long history of sacrifice, we'll make sure you get what you deserve." I nodded, my resolve growing. This wasn't just about money or property, it was about reclaiming my voice, my dignity, my freedom. Back at the house, I began piecing together my new life. The modest space felt like a sanctuary, the quiet calming in a way I hadn't known before. Each morning, I jogged through the park, the crisp air filling my lungs. I cooked breakfast just for me, savoring every bite as though rediscovering the joy in living. And every evening, I sat by the window, watching the stars stretch across the sky. But just as peace began to settle, the storm returned. My phone buzzed again, Frank's assistant, delivering his latest attempt at control. "Mrs. Dawson, Mr. Dawson wants to remind you that your account has been frozen. He says if you don't return, further measures will be taken." I smirked, my voice calm as I replied, "Tell Mr. Dawson my attorney has sent him a formal notice. Any further measures he takes will only strengthen my case." That evening, I checked Cynthia's social media, half curious, half expecting her next dig. Sure enough, there it was, a post dripping in passive aggression, thinly veiled as an innocent comment. Some people really have it made. A husband who loves them, a son who adores them, while others just go on vacation and abandon their families. I laughed to myself, shaking my head. Cynthia's desperation was almost amusing, but the rage bubbling beneath her polished exterior was unmistakable. I typed a reply, my fingers steady. "Cynthia, you really do have a high opinion of me. I raised my son for 22 years, and he remembers every detail about you, but not my birthday. I've been married for decades and didn't even know my husband could cook. You two seem happy, enjoy it." Minutes later, my phone rang. Frank, his voice full of anger. "Kate, what are you doing? Cynthia and I are clan delete that comment." I let out a bitter laugh. "Clean? Is that what you call this mess?" "Frank, I've spent years ignoring the whispers, believing your lies, and covering for your mistakes. I stayed silent while you disrespected me, humiliated me, and treated me like I didn't matter. But now, I'm done. You want me to delete the comment? Then prove to me it's not true." His silence was all the confirmation I needed. Days turned into weeks. each one bringing new revelations. Tina, his sister, called unexpectedly, her tone softer than I'd ever heard before. "Kate, I'm sorry for everything," she said, her voice shaking. "Frank's a bastard. He's yelling at all of us over Cynthia, even threatened me. I've never seen him like this. Don't come back, let him fall apart without you." I felt a strange mix of gratitude and vindication. Tina had spent years picking at me, criticizing my every move. But now, even she saw through Frank's facade. On the 30th day of my trip, the final showdown began. Frank's assistant called again, his tone formal but strained. "Mrs. Dawson, if you don't return home within the next 2 days, you'll receive a formal divorce notice from Mr. Dawson's attorney." I smiled, my reply sharp. "Perfect. My attorney has already sent his notice. Tell Frank to check his mailbox." When the plane landed, I didn't return to his mansion. Instead, I drove straight to the old house my parents had left. Me, a place untouched by Frank's influence, filled only with my memories and my choices. The first night in my new home, I slept deeply, uninterrupted by the chaos I had left behind. This wasn't just a new chapter, it was a rebirth. Frank could keep his mansion, his frozen accounts, his schemes. I didn't need any of it. For the first time, I was free. Jason's words echoed in my mind long after Mike's outburst silenced him. She chose that life. The audacity of it, the sheer entitlement, left me breathless. I had chosen this life. Yes, but not the way they saw it. I chose to love, to nurture, to sacrifice for a family I believed in. What I hadn't chosen was to be disrespected, dismissed, and discarded like an afterthought. Mike's voice was still ringing in the room, sharp and furious. "You ungrateful little bastard," he growled, towering over Jason. "How dare you insult your mother like that? After everything she's done for you, this is how you repay her?" Jason scrambled to his feet, his face pale, his bravado crumbling. "Uncle Mike, I didn't mean—" "Don't!" Mike cut him off, his voice low and dangerous. "Don't you dare try to weasel your way out of this. You've been spoiled rotten, Jason, and it's about time someone told you the truth." I stood in the doorway, watching the scene unfold with a strange mix of sadness and satisfaction. For years, I had shielded Jason from the consequences of his actions, excusing his behavior, hoping he would grow into the man I knew he could be. But now, I realized that my protection had only enabled him. He needed to hear this. He needed to face the truth. Jason turned to me, his voice trembling. "Mom, you're just going to stand there? You're not going to say anything?" I met his gaze, my expression calm but unyielding. "What do you want me to say, Jason? That I forgive you? That I'll come back and pretend everything is fine? Not this time." His face crumpled, a mix of anger and desperation. "Mom, you're being unreasonable. You're tearing this family apart." I stepped forward, my voice steady. "No, Jason. This family was broken long before I decided to leave. You just didn't notice because I was the one holding it together. But I'm done being the glue. If you want this family to survive, you'll have to figure it out without me." Mike placed a protective hand on my shoulder, his presence a quiet reassurance. "You don't owe them anything, Kate," he said firmly. "Not anymore." Jason opened his mouth to argue, but the words died on his lips. He looked at me, then at Mike, and finally stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind him. The sound echoed through the house, but it didn't shake me. If anything, it felt like the closing of a chapter. Later that evening, I sat with Mike in the living room, the quiet hum of the television filling the space. He handed me a cup of tea, his expression softening. "You did the right thing, Kate. It's not easy, but it's necessary." I nodded, my hands wrapped around the warm mug. "I know, it's just hard to let go. I spent so many years trying to make this family work, and now it feels like I'm walking away from everything I built." Mike shook his head. "You're not walking away, Kate. You're reclaiming yourself. That's not giving up, that's courage." The next day, I received a call from my lawyer. The court hearing was set, and Frank's team had already begun their counterarguments. But I wasn't afraid. I had spent years fighting for everyone else now. I was ready to fight for myself. Frank, of course, wasn't going down without a fight. He sent message after message, each one more desperate than the last. "Kate, think about Jason. Think about our family. Do you really want to destroy everything we've built?" I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. As the court date approached, I focused on preparing my case. Susan was a constant presence, her support unwavering. "You've got this, Kate," she said one evening as we sorted through documents. "Frank thinks he can intimidate you, but he's wrong. You're stronger than he'll ever be." Her words bolstered me, giving me the strength to keep going. This wasn't just about the divorce seat, it was about reclaiming my life, my identity, my worth. The day of the hearing arrived, and I walked into the courtroom with my head held high. Frank was already there, his expression a mix of anger and disbelief. He had always underestimated me, always assumed I would bend to his will. But today, he would see the woman he had taken for granted for far too long. The proceedings were tense, each side presenting their arguments with precision. Frank's lawyer tried to paint me as ungrateful, a woman who had lived off her husband's success without contributing anything of her own. But my lawyer was ready, countering every claim with evidence of my sacrifices, my contributions, my worth. By the end of the day, the judge had heard enough. The ruling was clear. I would receive the compensation I deserved, along with full ownership of the house and the SUV. Frank's face turned a deep shade of red, his fury barely contained. But I didn't care. For the first time in years, I felt free. As I left the courtroom, Susan was waiting for me, her smile wide and proud. "You did it, Kate," she said, pulling me into a hug. "You finally did it." I smiled, a weight lifting from my shoulders. "Yes," I said softly. "I did." That evening, I returned to my parents' house, the place that had become my sanctuary. I sat on the porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon, the sky painted in hues of orange and pink. For the first time in decades, I felt at peace. This wasn't the end, it was a new beginning. And this time, I was writing my own story. Tina's tearful voice rang in my ears long after I hung up the call. Her desperation, her sudden praise for my past sacrifices, felt hollow. They weren't looking for reconciliation, they were looking for rescue. I stared out at the endless rolling hills of the vineyard, the soft rustling of the grapevines in the breeze calming my thoughts. They'd learned, finally, how much weight I'd carried for them, but not out of love, out of the void my absence had left behind. And for the first time in years, their pleas didn't move me. I wasn't going back. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and violet, Mike joined me on the porch, a glass of wine in hand. "You okay, sis?" he asked gently, watching me closely. I nodded, offering him a small smile. "For the first time in a long time, I am." He chuckled softly, leaning back in his chair. "Good. You deserve this peace, Kate. You always have." Over the next few days, I poured myself into enjoying our trip. My parents glowed with happiness, their laughter echoing across the tranquil vineyard as they strolled through the rows of grapes. For years, I had taken their quiet support for granted, too consumed by my role as Frank's wife and Jason's mother to fully appreciate the love they'd always given me. Now, I was determined to cherish every moment with them. One afternoon, while sipping wine under the shade of an ancient olive tree, my phone buzzed again. Another message from Amber. "Kate, I don't know how to fix things with Jason. He won't eat. He's angry all the time. Please help me." I stared at the message, the words a tangled mix of guilt and desperation. My fingers hovered over the keyboard before I finally replied. "Amber, I can't help you. Jason made his choices, just as I've made mine. He'll have to figure this out on his own." Her response was almost immediate. "You're really abandoning him? After everything?" I didn't reply. There was no point. She didn't understand she couldn't, 2-7. Jason wasn't my responsibility anymore. I had given him everything, and he had thrown it all away. Now, it was his turn to face the consequences. A few days later, Susan called, her voice light with excitement. "Kate, you're going to love this. I've already started setting up the studio, and I've got clients lined up for when you get back. This is going to be incredible, you and me running our own business. Can you believe it?" I laughed, the sound genuine and free. "I can believe it, Susan. For the first time, I really can." Returning home after the trip felt different this time. The air in my parents' house was warm, welcoming a stark contrast to the cold emptiness of Frank's mansion. I spent my mornings jogging through the park, my afternoons preparing simple, satisfying meals, and my evenings curled up with a book by the fire. For the first time in decades, my life felt like my own. But peace, as I'd learned, always seems to attract those who thrive on chaos. One evening, just as I was settling down with a cup of tea, my phone rang. It was Jason. For a moment, I considered ignoring it, but curiosity got the better of me. "Mom," he said, his voice quieter than I'd expected. "I'm sorry." The words hung in the air, unfamiliar and uncertain. "Jason," I replied evenly. "What are you sorry for?" He hesitated, the silence stretching between us. for how I treated you, for everything. I didn't mean what I said. I was just angry. I closed my eyes, the weight of his words settling heavily on my heart. Jason, anger doesn't excuse cruelty. Do you understand that? Your words, your actions, they cut deep, and they can't be undone with a simple apology. His voice cracked, a mix of frustration and desperation. What do you want me to say, Mom? How do I fix this? I sighed softly, my tone firm but not unkind. You need to grow, Jason. You need to take responsibility for your life, for your family, for your actions. I can't do that for you. No one can. The line was quiet for a moment before he finally whispered, I'll try. I nodded even though he couldn't see me. That's all I ever wanted, Jason. As the call ended, I felt a flicker of hope not for reconciliation, but for Jason's growth. Perhaps in time, he would become the man I'd always believed he could be. But that was his journey to take, not mine. The next morning, I met Susan at the studio, the space alive with potential. The walls were painted a soft, inviting color, the floors gleamed, and the air buzzed with the promise of new beginnings. Susan grinned, pulling me into a hug. This is it, Kate. Our fresh start. I had finally found my freedom, and I wasn't going to let anyone take it away again. One afternoon, Frank appeared at my studio. Dressed sharply as ever, he waited in the lobby, a bouquet of roses in hand. The receptionist came back, hesitant. Kate, there's a man here to see you. Says it's urgent. I sighed, brushing off my apron and stepping into the room. Frank's eyes lit up briefly, as if he thought the sight of me might soften my resolve. It didn't. Kate, he began, his tone carefully composed. I've realized I was blind before. That money I gave Cynthia, I took it back. I've already unfrozen your accounts and wired you $1 million. Spend it however you like. I want you to handle the household finances again. Let's come home to each other. I didn't respond right away, letting his words hang in the air as I studied him. Mike's voice echoed in my mind, teasing but serious. Kate, don't you dare go soft. I tilted my head slightly, my voice calm. Frank, I gave you 20 years, the best years of my life, and you squandered them. Do you really think $1 million changes that? Do you think it erases the lies, the neglect, the sheer audacity of your entitlement? His face faltered, his confident facade cracking slightly. I thought you might see this as a fresh start, he said weakly. I smiled faintly, shaking my head. The only fresh start I'm interested in is the one I've already built for myself. Go home, Frank. Whatever this is, it's too little, too late. As he left, defeated, I felt no regrettingly clarity. Men like Frank believed money could fix anything, that gestures could erase years of damage, but I had moved beyond his reach. For the first time, I was untouchable. Not long after, Jason made another attempt. This time, he arrived at my parents' home, holding his child in his arms, a pitiful look plastered on his face. Mom, he began, his voice trembling, I'm sorry. I really mean it this time. I was wrong. I took you for granted. Please, just come back. We need you. I met his gaze, unflinching. Jason, I said evenly, I've heard your apologies before, and each time they were nothing but empty words. You made your choices. Now you have to live with them. His expression twisted, his voice rising in frustration. Mom, how long are you going to drag this out? It's been over half a year. How long will this drama last? There it was, the mask slipping, the real him showing once again. I smiled faintly, tossed the bouquet of flowers he had brought into the trash, and walked away. Mike, who had been watching from the side, stepped forward, his voice firm. You idiot! If you really understood what you did wrong, you wouldn't talk to your mom like that. And you? He pointed at Frank, who lingered near the car, thinking she's just going to come back to cook and clean for you again? Dream on. Don't forget, we only ever tolerated you two because of Kate. Frank and Jason left empty-handed. Later, I heard they erupted in anger on the ride home, blaming each other for their failures. But it wasn't my concern anymore. Cynthia, true to form, managed to stir chaos wherever she went. She appeared at Jason's home one day, casually bagging Amber's designer dresses as though they were her own. You just had a baby, she said flippantly. Your figure's not back yet. What's the point in keeping these? I'll put them to better use. Jason, walking in on the scene, exploded. He kicked both Amber and Cynthia out, shouting loud enough for the neighbors to hear. Cynthia, of course, ran crying to Frank, but even he had grown tired of her antics. In the end, she was left isolated, her family slowly cutting her off, her charm no longer enough to mask the chaos she brought with her. Frank, ever the strategist, managed to recover the money he had given Hera, fact he proudly shared with me, as though it were some grand gesture. "Kate," he said one evening, calling from a number I hadn't blocked yet, "I've realized my mistakes. These months apart made me see the truth. You're the one who holds this family together. Please, come home." I let his words hang in the air for a moment before replying, my tone steady. "Frank, I gave you the best years of my life. The rest of them, they're mine. That door is closed and it's never reopening. Goodbye."